Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, Chapter 2, and we will cover verses 87 to 96 today. The account of Bani Israel, Part 6, using death as a sign, the human self-development. There is a mention of death in a couple of verses. So I thought that is an interesting part of today's presentation. So we should have some details covered under those slides. And these are the references. Again, all excerpts in this presentation have been taken from volume 2 of the meanings of the Quran. And this is our contact. Now, the first slide is some points of general guidance. Now, what I've done over here is from my own experience and some reading as well. I thought to share some thoughts on one important aspect where we exchange views with others who are not prepared for the Quranic system of deen. We should keep in mind that by virtue of acquiring a higher understanding in the light of the Quran, we develop a higher awareness and wider perspective of the human world. When we converse with others who are not yet exposed to the Quranic way of thinking, we have no issue talking about the issues faced within the man-made systems. However, the moment we draw attention to the guidance of the Quran, most are found to be unprepared for this line of argument. And we experience it, that when we are talking to the people and we are at the same level of understanding like man-made system, then there is no argument or any altercation with them. Generally, people understand based on the evidence that what are the issues faced by humanity. But the moment we come to the solution side of it and come to the Quran, some kind of an invisible veil appears between us. Those who are not seeking guidance and have never thought about the serious issues of life, for example, the problems faced by yatim and miskeen, that is, people who are deprived and isolated, created by man-made systems, even if they are born Muslims, they are so deeply entrenched in the religious belief system based on ritualized worship that they resort to arguments relating to the 5 pillars of Islam. For example, they ask, what about namaz or salat? So immediately they feel threatened that somehow when we talk about the Quran, their ritualized version of Islam is going to evaporate. This kind of conversations takes place at 2 different levels of understanding. And that is the purpose of putting this slide over here and sharing it with among us, that we should be aware of it, that by virtue of coming to the Quran, we have acquired a higher understanding about the issues of life. At a normal level of conversation, there are no difficulties faced by students of the Quran. For example, talking about religious beliefs is fairly easy, as long as we do not present the Quran, which then invariably changes batil beliefs. Similarly, if we are exchanging views on the problems of the man-made systems, the conversation generally remains civil. Because people, after living a life within man-made system, they seldom think of an alternative to the man-made system. And somehow they feel that if minor changes are carried out within this system, from which they individually and collectively as a society can benefit, that should be fine. But as far as the higher purpose of life is concerned, or the problems faced by the whole of mankind are concerned, they think it is none of their business. Next point is, however, the moment we introduce the Quranic values in it, people start to feel uncomfortable, as this introduces accountability and conflicts with the wrong paths these non-Quranic selves are pursuing in their life. Because human beings don't like to be faced with their own follies, with their own faults, with their own weaknesses. And because that changes their position of status quo or comfortable position and their belief system. And this is the dilemma we face as Quranic students. So this thing we should keep in mind and be prepared for that, that as our level of understanding expands, our consciousness expands, and we come to grips with the finer details of the system of deen, we also learn that what kind of mu'mineen Quran requires, with whom the promises of Allah can be fulfilled. So this is actually a positive point, but we should remain aware of it. We go to the first verse of today's presentation, verse 87. Bani Israel reminded Allah's guidance was sent via his messengers. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابَ وَكَفَّيْنَا مِنْ بَعْدِهِ بِالرُّسُلِ وَآتَيْنَا عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ بِالرُّوحِ الْقُدُسِ أَفَكُلَّمَا جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ بِمَا لَا تَهْوَى أَنفُسُكُمْ اسْتَكْبَرْتُمْ فَفَرِيقًا كَذَّبْتُمْ وَفَرِيقًا تَقْتُلُونَ. The process of sending divine laws to you did not continue only till the time of Musa. Even after this, different messengers kept coming to you one after another. At the end, Messenger Isa, the son of Maryam, came to you. We had given him clear signs and evidences as well, i.e., we had bestowed him with support and strength through this wahi, which reached him devoid of any contamination from us. While you had made thousands of adulterations in the wahi which remained with you from previous Anbiya. But your behavior always remained such that whenever any messenger said anything which went against your interests and proclivities, and because of which your hearts did not like it, you became obdurate there and then. Then you falsified some from among these messengers, and some you were even inclined to slay. This is exactly what you are doing with this book, so that a change can be made in it according to your wishes. And we see this. What Quran is saying is that the series of messengers came to mankind and they came with the message of Allah, but previous generations, what they did was they tampered that revelation. And ultimately, we reached that stage where the last messenger appeared on the scene. And the book is now preserved for all times, and Muslim Ummah is made responsible to deal with the Quran and spread the message and establish the system of deen. The next slide is human intellect alone cannot create a world free from fear and huzn. And this is something which we should keep in mind. It should be deeply entrenched within our subconscious. In fact, it should become part of our psyche as we breathe every day on a regular basis. So it should become part of us that the human world cannot get rid of fear and huzn unless they come to the Quran. The word kafaina has appeared here in this verse, which means to come one after another in succession. In another place it is stated, then sent we our messengers in succession, and which is called tawatur. It is stated in the Quran that messengers were sent to every nation in the world, but it is obvious that when there is reference to messengers coming to one nation or country, the process of one after another will appear before us. In connection with the interval between the arrival of one messenger and a second messenger, it is stated about Rasul-ullah, that is the last messenger, O people of the book, now has come unto you, making things clear unto you, our messenger, after the break, and the word used is fatra in our messengers. We can have a look on this verse in our own time. The meanings of fatra is actually the cooling down of the heat of something, or the dissipation in its effect. After a messenger who used to pass on the deen of Allah, his followers would afterwards tamper in it. And this is what human beings do. They're quite good in doing it, that is, adding lies into truth. And this is what they have done with the Quran as well, except the original script is preserved for all times. Due to which the fervor of that deen did not remain in its prior form. This is why after him another messenger would be sent who would again present deen in its original form. The Quran has explained this reality in detail in verse, for example, 2252 of Surah Al-Hajj. We should go through it as well and particularly look at its meanings in the Mafhum al-Quran. Next is finality of the Nubuwwat. Since the deen which was presented by Rasul-ullah became preserved in the Quran and Allah himself took on the responsibility for its protection. Hence, after Rasul-ullah, there was no need for any other messenger to come, because the messenger's job was to bring the book of Allah and communicate it to people and then implement to establish the system of deen. And this was done in the initial era of Islam. And once the book is complete and preserved, that is the Quran, then there is no need for another human being to come and bring another message. So the Quran does not need any amendment and any update. This is the reason that the words before you appear in verse 22:52, which mean that prior to Rasul-ullah, the process of messengers arriving was ongoing. But after Rasul-ullah, this was no longer needed because the wahi of Allah became preserved in the Quran. This is an important part of our concept, because if we understand it, then we become convinced that we are the ones who have to now spread the message of Allah after understanding it. It is true that after Rasulullah, his ummah tampered in deen, due to which its fire dimmed. And this is the state which we are facing today in the Muslim world, i.e., deen became converted into religion. But in order to create that same original zeal in it, there is no need for a messenger to come. This duty will belong to this ummah to establish that same system again according to the pure Quran. So this means that Quran still possesses that potential of establishing the system, whoever follows it, whoever understands it the way it projects itself, and then whoever gets training and they come together and then they follow it, the results of this recipe will exactly the same as these appeared previously. So that is a great satisfaction we get from the Quran. When it is stated that strength was conferred on him through Ruhul Qudus, the basic meaning of the word ruh is that of energy. Now this word was covered under one verse under Surah Bani Israel as well previously. But we can look at the root of this word as well in Lughat al-Quran. But the Quran has also used it for wahi. Ruh means wahi as well. And this was covered under Surah Bani Israel. An elucidation of the word Qudus has already been covered under verse 230, where Malaika said that this Adam you are creating who is going to shed blood and create fasad in the land. 2 points are intrinsic in wahi being Qudus. One is that the wahi sent to a messenger did not remain confined to his own self. It was his duty to disseminate it far and wide according to his reach. And secondly, that this wahi which was sent to every messenger used to be pure and free. And this comes under the word Qudus, from the contamination and tampering which used to be mixed with the wahi of previous messengers. So both dissemination as well as wahi being free from all kinds of contamination is part of this. Next slide is Muslims of today behave like the people of the book of the initial era of Islam. And this is another important point which comes out of our discussion from the Quran, that the Muslims of today who are least interested in the Quran and are also just paying lip service to the Quran for earning some kind of undefined reward which is called sawab. Whereas the Quran is the book for establishing the system of deen as an alternative to the man-made system. The Quran has leveled another charge against Bani Israel, which is also a charge against the Muslims of today, and that is that when a messenger used to come to you and present the deen of Allah, your condition was such that whatever part of it you liked, i.e. from which your vested interests were not affected, you would accept it. And whatever went against your interests and emotions, you would rebel against it and reject it. And we can see clear demonstration of it across the world. You used to adopt two techniques in this rebellion. You would either falsify that messenger or would make him ineffective, and sometimes it also happened that you would even take his life, or you would try to take his life. And this is one point we will discuss it at some point in the future. The important thing is that we see the same demonstration of it in today's world as well. For example, wherever Tolu Islam starts projecting the message of Allah, they label it with all kinds of negative wording. For example, calling it rejecter of Risalat or Munkar Hadith or Kafir and these kind of terms, because they want to draw the attention of anyone away from the book of Allah. When the Quran states that you choose which part you wish to follow from the divine revelation and which part you should be rejected, details have been covered in verse 285, previously we have gone through it in some detail, then this is that same practice which you have adopted in the time of Rasul-ullah as well. Hence it is stated in Surah Bani Israel, for example, when you mention your Rabb and Him alone in the Quran, they turn on their backs, fleeing from the truth. And we witness it because the Quran goes against their self, their own interests, and they don't want to give that up. And they are the ones who actually provide strength to the man-made system. So they become party to all the injustices and cruelty and tyranny which the man-made system let loose for poor people and the majority. Verse 88, human beings put locks on their own hearts. وَقَالُوا قُلُوبُنَا غُلْفٌ بَلْ لَعَنَهُمُ اللَّهُ بِكُفْرِهِمْ فَقَلِيلًا مَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. The degree of their aversion to the Quranic teaching is such that leaving aside pondering on it, they do not even wish to hear about it. And that is why they block their hearts and minds. They say that this can have no impact on our hearts. Say to them that this is not a matter of goodness or pride, that your hearts are not ready to accept its impact. The duty of the heart is to accept the true matter after having used the intellect and reasoning. Then know that those hearts which do not do this, and we witness that on this platform, for example, we have no problem in understanding what the Quran is telling us. And those people who do not wish to hear about it, that means they have put veils, covers on their own hearts and minds. And what is the outcome? They are living a life of humiliation and disgrace. And we as students of the Quran at least understand and recognize that humiliation and disgrace which the humanity is facing in today's world, have been deprived of this potential and ability of theirs. The condition of these kinds of people becomes such that instead of reflecting and reasoning in whichever matter is presented to them, they make a decision from the start that we are simply not going to accept it. So they wish to stay in a state of death. So there is nothing in the hereafter, and they create all kinds of imbalances in the world. There are very few among those with this kind of mentality who accept the true matter after thinking and understanding. So the Quran over here has said, فَقَلِيلًا مَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. And lanat over here means that they do not get the benefit which are associated or attributed to the Quran. By following the Quran, we gain certain benefits, certain advantages, and particularly towards the system of deen. But these people cannot get it because they have covered their hearts and minds. Next slide is the Quran invites to keep on gaining knowledge. When it is said to them to stop a while and reflect whether whatever you are saying, is it really based on haqq and truth? If this is not the case, then whatever we are presenting before you, look at it and evaluate it keenly also. In response, they say that we do not need to do this. Whatever we needed to understand, we have understood it. And this is a recipe for disaster for any human being when he or she thinks that despite having an opportunity to expand his or her vision, they refuse to do it. You can understand it as if our hearts are encased in covers, due to which nothing from the outside can reach them, or that they are those vessels which are already full to the brim. Hence, there is no room for even one more drop. And this is the beauty of the Quran, that over here Allah is translating those and sharing those thoughts of theirs with us. Very few people say that. Whenever we pass on the message, most of them, particularly Muslims, do not reject it. They just show no interest and move away. But over here, Quran is telling us what exactly is going through their own psyche. Whatever knowledge we needed to acquire, we have done it. Now there is no allowance for any further increase. So as a result, they do harm to themselves. The last words of this verse describe what the outcome of this mentality is. Whoever thinks that we do not need to acquire any more knowledge, they do not remain as living and awake human beings. Instead, they become relegated to being fossilized skeletons. They look like human beings, but they do not understand that what they are doing by rejecting the message of the Quran, when it comes to them, they are doing a great, immense harm to themselves. And as a result, of course, if they are in a position of responsibility in this world, they do gross harm to wider mankind as well. Human life is traversing evolutionary phases. It is advancing together with the times. For this, it is essential that man should remain in touch with the evolution of knowledge. In fact, it is the status of a moment that he should be at the forefront in his era. So from here, we should also understand that we should be abreast with a lot of details of the man-made system, that what exactly is taking place in the system across the world in various countries and what leadership is doing presently in every country. And nowadays we are lucky that we got social media and particularly YouTube, where we can watch a lot of clips which deal with these issues in a very brief and summarized form. Becoming static at any point on the highway of life by thinking that we have reached the ultimate point of knowledge is a sign of having suffered a defeat in the battle of life. A very important sentence put over here. And we should go through volume 2 because there is a lot more covered in that volume. Allah has given complete guidance in the Quran. There is neither the need for any alteration in this nor the scope for any addition. But in order to tread the journey of life in the light of this principled guidance, the acquisition of knowledge will be necessary, and this necessity will always remain. And we should keep in mind that once we have come to the Quran, accepted Iman, and are committed to this path called Sirat-e-Mustaqim, any effort, for example, the effort made to know about the man-made system, also contributes to our self-development. Any effort with this kind of psyche which we have acquired, whatever effort we make on this path with this in mind, that we are moving, advancing towards the system of Deen, it will 100% contribute to our self-development. The next slide is applying collectively to world nations in 2026. The importance of this requirement is such that even that pure and exalted being who triumphed in the heights of knowledge, he was also taught this supplication, that is the messenger himself. But say, O my Rabb, advance me in knowledge. It is obvious that in this supplication, that knowledge was also included which Rasul-ullah was receiving from Allah through Wahi, and which had not yet reached its conclusion, i.e. the sending down of the Quran was ongoing. That means during that time they were becoming aware of all the empires around them and what is happening in them. So that was part of educating themselves because they were preparing for the future system of Deen. And together with this, also that human knowledge in the light of which Rasulullah had to demonstrate the establishment of this heavenly guidance in the form of a tangible system. The pure life of Rasulullah is proclaimed as being Uswa Husna, the most balanced model. That is, by understanding and following that model, we can achieve what is associated with the system of Deen. And our opinion is that in obedience to that Uswa, this supplication is such that it should keep pulsating like a dynamic wish in the heart of every moment. O my Rabb, advance me in knowledge. Rabbi zidni ilman. In the verse being discussed, it has been stated that these people say with great pride that we do not have any necessity to acquire knowledge. We do not even need to listen to the word of anyone. Our knowledge is complete. And we see that because words don't hurt. If one is not prepared to listen something, that means one is depriving himself or herself of that knowledge. So what people should do is at least listen to it and then keep it reserved for the future, as and when some light comes to their heart and they start looking for a solution to the human problems, they can go back and approach the Quran. But if they have rejected it, then obviously there is nothing in the subconscious favorable for the Quran, and they will never be able to come to the Quran in their future life. The Quran has declared that this is the kafir mentality, and its outcome is that man remains deprived of the prosperities of knowledge and reality. Very few among them are going to accept Iman. Next verse 89, opting for kufr deprives us of an eminent life. وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ كِتَابٌ مِّنْ عِندِ اللَّهِ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَهُمْ وَكَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ يَسْتَفْتِحُونَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ مَا عَرَفُوا كَفَرُوا بِهِ فَلَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. So Quran again says over here that those who display kufr, they cannot benefit from the message of the Quran, and obviously if they don't benefit, they will have nothing in the hereafter. This condition of theirs is becoming like this when that code of laws from Allah has reached them, which is going to demonstrate the truth of those ethical values and claims which are present among the divine teaching which they possess, and for which they used to pray to Allah for it to come so that they can succeed over the kuffar. So success over the kuffar means that the system of deen will replace the man-made system in some part of the planet Earth, and then gradually it will attract others as well as a model. They know full well that this code of laws has descended from the direction of Allah Himself, but despite this, they are denying it. But they have not caused any harm to this divine code by this denial. Rather, what has happened is that as a result, they themselves have become deprived of its blessings. So this is what lanat means. It is not some kind of a curse. It has a practical connotation that we will not benefit from it. For example, if we go to the doctor being not well and we get the prescription and we do not follow that prescription, that will become a lanat because we haven't benefited from that prescription, and we will keep suffering from that disease. But over here, the issue is psychological, and psychological diseases do not show up its effects in a short term. We go to the next slide. If we wish to have a better world, then we need to come to the Quran for guidance and help. It is essentially the same point that if we want a world free from fear and huzn and anxiety or all kinds of psychological problems, then we have to come to the system of deen. These people are being rebellious and rejecting the truth of this book, which does not oppose the true teaching of their Anbiya, rather it supports it, and is that which will demonstrate those proclamations which were made to them to be true. They were waiting for the coming of a true Nabi and used to make supplications to Allah that he should come so that they can then overcome their opponents. They fully recognize the truth of that teaching which this Rasul has brought with him, but despite this, they are rebelling against it. And this is an interesting because all religions are waiting for some future reformer, some future messenger to come and relieve them from all the problems, whereas the Quran is presenting them a ready-made solution to all their problems, and Muslims, by seeing the other religions, also waiting for some reformer in the future. Due to this, there will be neither any loss to this messenger, nor will any harm be caused to the book of Allah. It will only be their own loss because they will be deprived of those felicities and prosperities of life which can be achieved by following this book. And interesting is that if any reformer does come in the future, they will be gunning for him and opposing him and will be after his life, just like the reformers of today. According to the Quran, this one who was to come later, the final messenger for all times, arrived in the being of Rasul-ullah and gave that divine book to the world, which is the final book to come from the direction of Allah. It is immutable and also preserved. What a great blessing this book is from Allah, that it is immutable and preserved. And once it is followed, one doesn't have to worry about the future and its outcomes, because the outcomes will always be 100% success in the long run. From this, the process of those to come ended, and this is what is termed Khatm-e-Nubuwwat, that is the finality of messengerhood. After Rasul-ullah, no one appointed by Allah will come, because there is no need for that. Human beings are equal. Any human being, any Jamaat, any group of human beings who get onto the path called Sirat-e-Mustaqim with this book in their hand and understand and follow it, they will get exactly the same results which are noted in the Quran. A more detailed discussion on this aspect is covered in the Meanings of the Quran, Volume 2. So I will recommend strongly we should go through this book. Next is verse 90. Human negative emotions adversely impact our rational thinking, reasoning potential. بِئْسَ مَا اشْتَرَوْا بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ أَنْ يَكْفُرُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ بَغْيًا أَنْ يُنَزِّلَ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ عَلَىٰ مَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ فَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ عَلَىٰ غَضَبٍ وَلِلْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. Do you know what the real reason is for their denial? Only this jealousy, that why is this messenger not from among Bani Israel? They have made this decision themselves that the blessings and bounties of the whole world have been specifically allocated to Bani Israel, so much so that even messengerhood is confined to the sphere of their nationality. These are just excuses. They didn't want to follow the Quran because they had tampered their books, and these books now suited their evil desires. They were willing to keep following those desires and not to give up that path. And we can see the manifestation of that in our today's world. All religions are following their own desires, everyone. They just do some kind of a private worship and they think they have pleased their own self-fabricated God. Even though messengerhood is that assignment which is conferred according to the law of Mashiach of Allah on the one who is considered worthy of it. There is no distinction in it of nationality, language, and color. And we see that as well, that people even from non-Muslims who read the Quran, they always have some kind of prejudice and malice within their own heart. And they look at the Quran with a view to criticize it rather than to seek guidance. And most of the time they pick up very minor issues here and there, even from translations, and most of them keep quiet. Because even in translation, some of the verses are so powerful that they simply cannot deny their effect on them. In any case, all that happened due to this obstinacy of theirs was that they became deprived of all the prosperities of life. The field of their hopes became burnt and turned into ashes, and their denial and rebellion became the cause for such a humiliating ruin of theirs in which all their collective power was shattered. What an evil bargain this is which they have struck in return for their life. And this is the end of every one of those nations which chooses rebellion against the divine laws. And we see that as well in today's, for example, environment, what is happening in Gaza and Palestine in the Middle East. Every one of them is living under fear, anxiety, uncertainty created by their own hands. Next slide is human emotions of prejudice and jealousy block the cognitive potential of reflection and reasoning. For the sake of a few worldly benefits, they have sold the priceless essence of their selves in return for a few counterfeit dirhams, i.e., they rebelled against the book of Allah. And the reason for this rebellion was not that they had arrived at this conclusion after using their intellect and reasoning that this book is not based on haqq and truth. Not at all. They simply did not feel any need to use their intellect and reasoning. And this is the bottom line in not coming to the Quran. Because Quran demands very high level of intellect, rational thinking, reasoning, and collecting of evidence about the man-made system, and then coming to the Quran and then bringing change within oneself. They rejected it merely due to this dispute and prejudice that why has messengerhood arrived in the family of Bani Ismail instead of Bani Israel, i.e. that same ancient jealousy and prejudice which they had towards Bani Ismail became a wall standing in the path of their acceptance of haqq and truth. And the interesting is they don't have to worry now, that is the Bani Israel of today, because Muslims are on their side. The consequence was that the punishment in which they were suffering due to their former crimes increased further due to this rejection and rebellion. These displaced people had found refuge in the suburbs of Medina, but there they engaged in such intrigues against the Muslims that they had to leave from these as well in a very humiliating manner. The Quran has called this azabun muheen, i.e. an extremely humiliating punishment. And what is a greater punishment that despite having all the physical conveniences of life, people are living under gross fear, anxiety, uncertainty all the time. Next slide is verse 91. Questioning our individual collective past behavior and its impact on today is part of learning and self-development. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ قَالُوا نُؤْمِنُ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْنَا وَيَكْفُرُونَ بِمَا وَرَاءَهُ وَهُوَ الْحَقُّ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَهُمْ قُلْ فَلِمَ تَقْتُلُونَ أَنْبِيَاءَ اللَّهِ مِنْ قَبْلُ إِنْ كُنْتُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. When they are told, come, accept Iman in the truths of this divine code, then in reply to this they say, no, we only have Iman in that which was sent to us. Other than that, we are not prepared to have Iman in any other teaching. And this is the condition of today's Christians as well. Despite knowing that this Bible is of no use and there are horrendous amount of contradictions in that, they are not willing to consider an alternative, that is the Quran. And our own people, that is the Muslims of today, they look at the Quran, but they are not willing to come to the Quran 100% with a view to get those benefits, and they go outside the Quran, whatever is written as ahadith, and wish to follow that. Even though this Quran is not against the true teaching sent to them, rather is one which will demonstrate the truth of those values and claims which are present among them from divine teaching. Say to them that if this is your only objection, that we do not accept this Quran because it has been sent to a non-Israelite, then tell us that before this, why did you used to sink to humiliating and ridiculing those Israelite Anbiya who used to keep coming to you? Why did you keep making their teaching ineffective, and why did you ever resort to threatening their very lives? And we have covered some aspect of Bani Israel, what they did to the messenger Musa and his brother Harun. This claim of yours that you used to have Iman in the Israelite Anbiya is being proven to be false through your own history. Bottom line is, people don't like the book of Allah, and then they come up with all kinds of excuses. Next slide is, the Quran is complete and preserved. We need to learn from the example of Bani Israel, that is not to be like them. When they are asked to accept Iman in the truths of this divine code, in response they say, no, we will only maintain Iman in what was revealed to us and will reject everything other than this. Even though the book to which they are being invited is not opposed to the truthful teaching sent down to them, rather it is one which will demonstrate those claims which are present among themselves to be true, and for which they are waiting for one to come. And we can see to what extent the Quran has gone to convince Bani Israel and then Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen of earlier era and us as well. Say to them that if this is your only objection, that we do not accept this Quran because it has been sent down on a Nabi who is not from Bani Israel, then explain how did you treat those Anbiya from Bani Israel who used to come to you before this. You never left any stone unturned to insult and humiliate them. Your opposition used to reach to such an extreme that you even used to be inclined to slay them. Hence, this claim of yours that you used to have Iman in the Anbiya from among Bani Israel is being proven false according to your own history. We need not go far. Messenger Isa was also from Bani Israel. Well, did you accept Iman in his claim of messengerhood? Never mind accepting Iman in him, you parade around with great pride declaring that you hung him on a cross. And this is something which Quran arrived and countered it, said that they could not do it, but they have spread this rumor around that this is what they did. You gave him the death of, Allah forbid, a cursed one. And despite that, Christians and Jews are one in creating fasad across the world. Now we go to the next verse, 92. Reminding is part of issuing a warning. People need to be warned about the injustices in the society. وَلَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ مُوسَى بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ ثُمَّ اتَّخَذْتُمُ الْإِجْلَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ وَأَنْتُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. Leaving aside other Anbiya of Bani Israel, what did you do to Musa himself? He had brought a perspicuous code of laws to you whose fundamental teaching was Tawheed. But you abandoned it and began calf worship. Say, was this Iman or Kufr? Was this obedience or rebellion? listening to the word of Allah and then going against it, such people commit serious crime according to the Quran. وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَكُمْ وَرَفَعْنَا فَوْقَكُمُ الطُّورَ خُذُوا مَا آتَيْنَاكُمْ بِقُوَّةٍ وَاسْمَعُوا قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَعَصَيْنَا وَأَشْرِبُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الْعِجْلَ بِكُفْرِهِمْ قُلْ بِئْسَ مَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِهِ إِيمَانُكُمْ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. This is verse 93. As has already been stated in verse 63, when we took a firm commitment of this matter in the foothills, that you will adhere to this divine code with full strength, then you were told to listen to this matter using the ears of your heart and understand it well. You had answered that we heard it and understood it well. But what happened after this? What happened was that instead of obedience to these laws, you adopted rebellion against them. This was because reverence for the calf had entered into the depths of your hearts, had become dissolved into your blood. And people find it very hard to get rid of the rituals and belief system of religions. Say to them, this is your previous record. Therefore, you're saying that we do not accept Iman in the Quran because we have Iman in that divine code which was sent down towards us is nothing more than self-deception and a delusion. If this is what your Iman teaches you and this is the kind of life it commands you to live, then 1,000 regrets on such an Iman. Next slide is, a covenant with Allah increases the expanse of our consciousness immensely. As we said previously as well, that we do not have any written kind of covenant because those kind of things will be decided under the system of Deen. But at this stage, willingly, voluntarily, we are making a covenant through the Quran with Allah that having been dissatisfied with the system, man-made system, we come to the system of Deen. A covenant was taken from you in the foothills of Mount Tur that you will hold fast to the divine book. You will listen to its teaching carefully and intently and will then obey it. You had acknowledged this, that you have heard it and understood it well. But what did you do after this? Instead of following it, you disobeyed it unashamedly in broad daylight. This was because, though you had listened to the words of this book, you did not give it a place in your heart because you had reservations in your heart. And we see it clearly demonstrated across the Muslim world that there is a Quran everywhere, but still they don't bother to even go through it and look at it as a system. Devotion and reverence for the calf had penetrated your heart. O Rasul, say to them that this is your former record and this is the reality of your Iman. That is, you are presenting evidence counter to your own Iman. You say one thing from your lips and do something different physically. Thus, you're saying that we do not accept Iman in the Quran because we already accept Iman in the Wahi from Allah, which was sent down to us. This is nothing other than self-delusion and creating trickeries. If this is what your Iman teaches you, and this is the kind of hypocritical life it commands you to live, then shame on you, then shame on such an Iman. And we can clearly see what Bani Israel are doing in the world of today. The issue regarding Bani Israel has been explained, but the lesson implicit in it for us invites us to reflect and reason. The Quran has declared that the practical meaning of Deen is to listen to the divine commands intently, to understand them and to act according to them, i.e., it is necessary to listen to them and understand them so that afterwards they can be acted upon. But if the situation is such that you keep listening to the words of the divine commands and after that keep acting against them, then it is obvious what the outcome of this will be. The word of 2026. Sameena wa Saina has appeared in this verse. We hear and we disobey. That is what it means. Is this not what our own situation has become reduced to? The extent to which we read or listen to the book of Allah, its example will not be found anywhere else in the world, and then the way in which we act against it in our practical life, its example also will not be found anywhere else in the world. Allah had stated that, say, we have listened and we will act according to it. Contrary to this, what we say with our tongues is that we hear, that is samena, and we disobey asaina. We listened, in fact we listened very well, but we will act against it. Aside from reading and listening to the Quran on a daily basis, the assiduousness with which we listen to the Quran in the 1 month of Ramadan. And it's quite interesting that we are around the month of Ramadan of 2026. And not only in the whole month, after that, the way in which we complete it in every single night, this is called Shabina. This is the utmost limit of listening. Even gathering of ours starts with listening to a recitation of Quranic verses. Qari come from far and wide and animate the congregations to hear the Quran. It is quoted with great spiritual rapture regarding the precincts of the Kaaba that throughout the whole year there is not a single moment, day or night, in which the words of the Quran are not heard floating in the air. All these are manifestations of samena, that is listening. But after this, just consider, is there any corner of the world today from where the voice of atana, that is we obey, rises up high? In contrast to this, manifestations of asaina, that is we go against it, will be observed in every place. We go to the verse 94, using death as a sign to evaluate our self-development and of others. قُلْ إِنْ كَانَتْ لَكُمُ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ خَالِصَةً مِّن دُونِ النَّاسِ فَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتَ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Say to them that it is also your claim that you are the favorite children of Allah, and the home of the hereafter, i.e. Jannat, is allocated to you, and non-Israelites have no portion in this. If you are truthful in this claim of yours, then you should never be fearful of death. Rather, you should wish for it. You should appear openly in the battlefield. You should not be engaging surreptitiously in intrigues. Death is just the first test of righteous conduct. So over here, a very interesting challenge is thrown to Bani Israel that if you think that the Jannat of the hereafter is for you, then come and lay down your life for the cause of Allah. And the next verse is two signs of non-moment selves. And what they do is they do zulm, all kinds of injustices, plus absence of accountability of the self. وَلَنْ يَتَمَنَّهُ أَبَدًا بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَاللَّهُ أَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. But you will see that these people will never be ready to die because they know what earnings they have sent forward for their life of the future. And this is the crux of it, that when people follow the wrong path, they will always be fearful of death. This is something which goes into their subconscious because this is what effect is. If we follow the wrong path, that wrong path is bound to create some psychological adverse effect, and that is where the reality of the Quranic truth lies. Allah is well acquainted with the treacheries of these kinds of deceitful intrigues. So two things are over here, that they will be doing injustices. So these injustices, people think they are getting away with that in the short term, but actually their psyche is being affected, and these create all kinds of fears and uncertainties, and they know underneath that they are going to die one day. And whatever belief system they have, they know there might be an accountability in the hereafter. And then the Quran is very clearly says, بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ, that they don't hold themselves accountable for what they are doing. So law of requital holds the key to life. Next is, on these two verses, the perpetual state of fear in which these people live. You are living a life of great humiliation and disgrace in this world. You cannot even find an abode in this vast and wide earth of Allah. You are wandering around scrounging. If you are truthful in this claim of yours that Jannat is waiting for you, then what are you waiting for? Just wish for death and lay down your life and go straight to this Jannat in which the means for all kinds of comforts and conveniences are present. And that is, you have noted down all these conveniences and comforts in your books other than the Quran. And we can see that how much of this is noted in the books of Ahadith. That individual or nation who can obtain this kind of life by simply closing his eyes, why would he spend even a day in this life of humiliation and disgrace? The desire for death should be evidence of the truth of this claim of yours. But the Quran itself stated, but they will never seek for death on account of the crimes which their hands have sent on before them. And Allah is well acquainted with the unjust. Because that is the way they have become. The words come cheap. And we can hear these kind of things from people who follow the religion, and they talk all very big. But once it comes to doing good deeds and coming to the Quran, they hate the book of Allah. They will never wish to die. Their history is brimming with such incidents that whenever there was an opportunity to lay down their life, they ran away from there with great cowardliness. This is because this claim of theirs is also merely for show that Jannat is awaiting them. They are well aware of the kind of disobedient and impractical life they live, and because of this, they can never wish for death. They know that Allah is fully acquainted with these crimes of ours, thus we will surely receive the punishment for these. So deep down, they know that they are accountable. Next verse is 96, the last verse of today. The question we need to ask ourselves is, why do we wish to live a long physical life? وَلَا تَجِدَنَّهُمْ أَحْرَصَ النَّاسِ عَلَىٰ حَيَاةٍ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا يَوَدُّ أَحَدُهُمْ يُعَمَّرُ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ وَمَا هُوَ بِمُزَحْزِحِهِ مِنَ الْعَذَابِ أَن يُعَمَّرَ وَاللَّهُ بَصِيرٌ بِمَا يَعْمَلُونَ. Leaving the desire for death to one side, you will see that these people are greedier than even the pagan, that is the mushrikeen Arabs, in their desire to live longer. And mushrikeen were those who were not people of the book, they didn't have any book. It is the desire of every single one of them to have a life lasting 1,000 years. And this is interesting, that people want to live very long. And deep down desire is to avoid that accountability which is associated with their life. And this is because of those injustices and wrongdoings they keep doing and insist on doing in this world on other human beings. But these fools do not understand even this much, that what will result from this prolonged life. Is it the case that they will be saved from the destructive effects of their evil deeds? This can never happen. And we know that the law of requital takes care of every one of our deliberate deeds and thoughts. The law of requital of Allah keeps an eye on every single deed of theirs. That is why the outcome of every deed of theirs will of a surety appear before them. In fact, it is already appearing, because all the wrongs they do, that is affecting their psyche. And once it is affecting their psyche, that creates this effect in terms of the fear of death and of course fear of accountability. And they are also fearful of the majority of human beings around them. For example, the rich and powerful in today's world are very fearful of the masses, because masses are in greater numbers. We are talking of something like 8 billion human beings across the world, and only very few at the top, about 1%. Next slide is, death is a deadline for the end of the first phase of our finite physical sojourn on the earth. Death is a very great stage of the calling to account of the self, that is a test of a human being. This is why the Quran has announced, He who created death and life, that He may provide opportunity to try which of you is best in deed. So try over here will mean that we try our own self using the Quranic light. And its Arabic is Allazi khalaqal mauta wal hayata liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala. So we can look at the root of this term used over here from Lugatul Quran, and normally it is translated as if Allah is testing human beings. Allah does not test any human being. Human beings test themselves using the Quranic value system. The very process of life and death has been kept for this reason, that from this test you can evaluate how much strength has been developed in your own self. The one in whose self strength has been developed, he embraces death like a bride, because he knows that death can do him no harm. Leaving aside expiring due to death, this actually opens a door into a fresh world before him. And with the opening of this door, those beautiful scenes of the next life appear before him, towards which he leaps forward. In the words of Iqbal, the sign of a moment is that he welcomes death with great joyfulness. But this does not mean that we on this platform are being the students of the Quran who are working towards the system of deen. We should start wishing for death by getting fed up with the problems of the man-made system. It is important to prolong our physical life, of course, if we are physically fit. In fact, we should make efforts to remain physically fit because there are very few students of the Quran who are really working towards the system of deen. And that is where this platform can help, because over here we are enhancing our knowledge and understanding of the Quran with a view to seek power from the laws of Allah so that we may be able to even start the system of deen somewhere on the planet Earth. Hence the Quran declares that how on earth are these Jews who are well acquainted with their own tricks going to wish for death? They are never going to wish for death. We have seen it. In Gaza, they are killing all these innocent human beings and children for no fault of theirs, just to get their land. And that land does not belong to any human being, and they all are going to die as well. So what is the point of enhancing the death of others when you yourself are also going to die? And their own land, which is a tiny piece of land in that area, and they have surrounded themselves with all kinds of enmity. And just see that how the whole world is against the Bani Israel of today. Is that the way to live life? But they don't think, because their thinking is blocked by doing wrong, injustice, zulm. And this is the effect on human psyche. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of deen.